This is Sierra Isaac, and you are listening to People Finding God podcast. I'm glad you're here. Okay, we're back to our 27th episode. This is crazy. I sometimes can't believe we have 27 episodes out. So today I have a guest, and her name is Carolyn, and I met her through Adrian, and Adrian is the one that edits this podcast, my good friend. She had met Carolyn and had just said, you need to meet her. She's amazing. And so me and Carolyn set up lunch and met, and she's wonderful. So we're bringing her on today, and so excited that she's here. And I can tell she's excited, so it makes it even more fun. So I am going to have Carolyn introduce herself and tell us more about her. Let the listeners know what you're about. So Carolyn, tell us about yourself.
Thank you. I am really honored and excited to be here. And as I was reflecting on what I might say during this time, I was thinking my friends and my family are going to be totally tripping that I am doing this, because I have not ever been public about my faith. You know, I've been in a few, studies over the years and a few small groups and things, but it's not something that, you know how they say, like, you don't talk politics, you don't talk money, you don't talk religion when you go to cocktail parties. So I haven't been chatting it up. And so it's really exciting for me to be here and just share my journey, which I think is sort of like a hodgepodge and a little bit unique, and might as well dive in.
Well, I love that because, I mean, everyone's spiritual journey is so sacred. Right? I mean, it's a sacred journey for everyone. And if anything, I have found that sacred journey to finding God is a mess. It's usually not an easy, like, you don't go and find God on vacation in Belize. I mean, maybe you do, right? Like, it's almost like really finding the true nature of God is really in hardship and trial and struggle. I mean, I think that he's found in those places. And so that could feel hard to talk about. You know, as I've brought guests on over this past year, it's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's a very vulnerable thing to speak about something that you haven't talked about, that is like something you don't normally share with the world. Right now it feels so intimate because it's just you and I in my living room next to the fireplace, right? It feels exposing and it's very vulnerable. So I appreciate you for even coming and wanting to share your story. And even furthermore, the fact that a lot of people don't know about it. This is amazing. So thank you. It is a very vulnerable thing to share. I totally acknowledge that. So
thank you. Well, I was thinking, where would I start? And I just figured I'd start at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Long Island, New York. And for the first decade of my life, 0 to 10, we went to a bunch of different churches. But the one that I remember the most, like, saliently is we went to a Baptist church. Now, I don't know if you know anything about the East Coast and, like, New York, but Baptist churches in Long Island, New York are not in the late 70s really weren't that common. And so
I don't know much about that.
Yeah.
Like, what was the culture around
I
it?
actually grew up very much a religious minority as a person who was attending any Protestant type of church, right? So, but most of the people who were within the Protestant or Christian realm that I was around, they were Irish Catholic or Italian Catholic, and the other folks were Jewish. So there were very few people in the town that I grew up when I was younger than 10, very few people who were Protestant. And my mom just wanted to find a church. She was a Christian woman, and she wanted to find a church that spoke to her. And she was always looking for a good pastor. And so she loved the pastor at the Baptist church. And I just remember actually having these really happy experiences. And now that, I'm grown and I learned more about Baptist practices, Sunday school is their jam. Okay, so I grew up with the most amazing Sunday school, and it was like, God loves you, you're amazing because he's great, and like, you can have God living inside of you, and you've got God's light, and you're a badass because you got God, and don't ever forget it, you know? And then we would have vacation Bible school in the summer, and so it wasn't what I experienced talking to my friends at school. Like, none of my friends at school went to the same church, and I just thought, like, everybody had their own little happy place that they went to be happy about God. Like that was really the message I was given. I was in the Pioneer Girls.
You know, I love that was your experience and that was the messaging you were receiving.
Yeah.
Which is so true, right?
And I think what was, in my memory at least, I wasn't getting any messages about this is how you're supposed to do things. The only thing that we had to do was just be very honoring and celebrating about the peace of God that's in you. Right. And so I remember being like very happy. Like, so I had God in me, and we would sing this little light of mine. Yeah. I'm going to let it shine. And I remember thinking like, that is really cool. Like, yeah, I've got a light and I'm going to let it shine. And that's what I'm supposed to do. Like, I'm supposed to be fabulous. Okay, great. And what a way to grow up as a child, you know? Yeah. And so that was really, really freeing. And that was a great way to come to know the dynamic of God. So now I had God, I had Santa, I had the Tooth Fairy. Like I had all these entities that were making my life amazing and that were not, you know, something you can see or touch, but you just had to believe. And like every kid under 10 has this capacity to just believe.
Yes.
Right? Yes. So I think that was a really, really nice way to kick off humanity in my experience as a human. And then after my grandfather died and we moved towns, then we had to find other churches because we had to find something closer by. And my mom wanted something that was in the town because she wanted to meet people in town. And so we were still the religious minorities as Christians, well, as Protestant Christians, because we moved to a town that was, like I said, primarily Italian Catholic and Irish Catholic. And so much so that the kids would, on Tuesday afternoons it was 6th grade that I moved there. I was in the elementary school. They would have a bus come and pick everybody up at like 1 p.m. and take them to St. Mary's down the street to go to the CCD classes. And so it was like me and like 3 other Protestant kids and then like 2 or 3 Jewish kids that would sit there and we would like play with the Cuisinart rods. And
that's so funny.
I remember thinking like, where is everybody going? And even to this day, I was an educator for many years, a teacher, a school leader, etc. I still don't understand how they were able to leave public school to go to
right. Be dropped off.
Yeah.
And like, right. Yes.
So I'm not sure how they configured that, but it happened. And
it's probably why they don't do it anymore.
Maybe. I don't know.
Who knows?
But so I just remember thinking, okay, what we do isn't what everybody else does. But we were a church going to a congregational church in town at that time. And we had bounced around my whole life up until that point. You know, I have the salient memories of the Baptist church, but we had been to Methodist church. We had been to Lutheran church. We had been to, it was congregational church when we were in that second town. So I remember thinking, well, there's a lot of different ways of doing church, and this is the most popular one in this town, so this is the way those people do it. And I remember really wanting to do it their way because everyone was getting their second middle names. I forgot what it's called in the Catholic Church. You do your confirmation, I think is what it's still called in the Catholic Church, and then you get to take on another name. And so like you would be like Carolyn. Like what I was like Carolyn Gale Deers, and then I would be like Carolyn Gale something Deers.
Oh, okay. Did you get a name?
No, because I wasn't Catholic.
Oh,
so I remember being very, very like envious of that. They all got to pick these names. And
were they like Bible names?
Yeah, they were supposed to be Bible names, but the name I wanted to pick was Jacqueline.
Okay.
So I used to scribble, like, I don't know, on papers and stuff, Carolyn Gale, Jacqueline Deers, because I wanted to be getting another name like everybody else. So I think I started to learn, and, you know, I did my classes at the Congregational Church to be confirmed. And I remember that not really resonating with me much, but I was a really good student. And so, like, studenting was my thing. And so I did the classes and I got the certificate and they did the ceremony, and now, yay, you're confirmed. And I remember not having much spiritual, connection to that at all, which is in stark contrast to my experience in the Baptist church when I was little at Sunday school, where it was like there were no rules and regulations in the Sunday school about how you were supposed to do things. But now I was, a young adult, and I have to learn all of these different things that we had to learn. And of course, I don't even remember them because that's how I did studenting, right? I just like, okay, we're just
and it's almost like,
figure it out for the
don't
test.
you almost feel like you remember how you felt versus what you did?
Oh yeah, that's a great,
what I mean?
great
like
noticing
you probably
on that part.
You remember how you felt there versus what you did to get a certification, right?
Yeah, that's a great way of phrasing it, because I didn't feel more connected to God at all. And so I started to learn, like, well, God is maybe God's an institution. And so then, when I was 18 years old, I'm kind of segueing now into, the next sort of chapter of my life of being in my 20s. When I was 18, I went off to college. I went to a small liberal arts women's college in Western Massachusetts called Mount Holyoke. And I actually went younger. I got put ahead in kindergarten, so I was a year younger for everybody. So I was only 18. I was only 17 when I went to college. And I came home from college that first year, and I remember being like, what am I doing? I don't even know. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. And I started journaling just kind of out of nowhere. I don't know where the idea came from. And the very first page of my journal when I was 18 years old after that first year of college says, I don't know who I am. And I just kept on journaling from there. And that was like the beginning of me tapping into, like, who am I? And, making sense of the world, and why am I here? And what's my purpose? And what do I want? And what am I supposed to do?
And how many of us actually ask that question? Like, it's kind of scary to write down, who am I? Yeah. Like that's like that put you on a path to, like, slowly probably like help you figure that out, right? But I'm like, how often do we sit and ask ourselves, like, who am I in this whole grand scheme of things? I love that you did that at 18.
Yeah. Well, I think I was very disoriented because, my parents had gone through a divorce. No one else in town was divorced. Most of them were Catholic. You don't get divorced when you're Catholic, and at least not in, 1985.
Yeah.
So it was like I was very disoriented around my family having kind of like fallen apart, right? My grandpa dying and my parents getting divorced, and then not really having a clear sense of like what that was. And I had a relationship in high school through college that wasn't really healthy for me, for my mental health. And so I was really kind of reaching for, like, who am I, and where do I fit in this world? How do I fit in this world? Because I no longer had, like the regular assignment of, like, this is how everyone does it, so this is what you do. And so I think I just started journaling because of that, because it was the only way for me to get out all of my wrestling of who did I want to become? Who was I supposed to be? Who am I now? Who does my boyfriend that ended up, not necessarily being the strongest of relationships for me? Who does he want me to be? Who do my parents want me to be? I'm having myself reflected by people at college, right? At school. And who do they think I am?
Wow. And
who do people in high school think I am? And I didn't fit in high school, but now I'm fitting in more in college, and like just reconciling all that. So I journaled for almost up until I was 31 years old. Yeah, I journaled until I met my husband.
Would you say your journals were like a combination of what you were doing, what you were going through, or was it strictly like more just really self-discovery? How did you journal? I'm just curious.
It was a little bit of everything, honestly. Like sometimes it was just writing about what was going on and making sense of it. Sometimes it was recording things. Sometimes it was wrestling with different ideas or concepts. Sometimes it was creative writing. Never poetry. I'm not a poet, and I don't really enjoy poetry, I'm sad to say. And so,
but I like that you said that, because it's like so many people are like, well, I'm not a writer. I'm not a journaler because I don't write. I don't write poetry. I don't write. But I love that you said that, because like, I don't like poetry, but like the writing was like this healing process for me. And I think too often when people think of journaling, you can tell me what you think about this, but I think too many people think journaling is just like putting in what's happening in your life. Like, okay, bullet points of like, okay, today I went to the store. And it's like journaling so much more than that. And I can guarantee that the journals you have are your treasure.
Oh yeah.
You would be grabbing those in a fire. for sure, right? Because you
Oh,
can
yeah.
look back and you can be like, look at the progress. You could see the journey. We forget the journey.
Yeah.
You have it all written down. And I think it's important to note that, like, look how flexible you are with the whole journaling thing. It's like creative writing, what's on my mind, I mean, it's all of it, right? I love that.
Exactly.
I love that you did that.
Yeah. So I started journaling, in college and really thinking about the world differently than I ever had, right? Which is a big part of going to a 4-year experience, right? And so I journaled a lot about that too, like what I was learning and what I was thinking about. And then after college, I moved to Boston because it was close. A friend had a room. I had a job, just some side job. I think it was waiting tables. And then, I had a job working on a boat. That was really fun. And so
Like a yacht, what kind of boat?
no, so after college, I moved to Boston because someone had an apartment I could live in, and I had the job from the boat. It was basically a floating dinner dance booze cruise. It was called the Spirit of Boston, and I was a deckhand, and it was really fun.
A booze cruise.
Yeah, it was a floating dinner dance booze cruise. They served lobster, and I was deckhand in charge of crowd control and trash and maintenance.
Do you ever get seasick?
No, well, yeah, deep sea fishing, but not in this
on the
particular
cruise.
job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So I moved to Boston and I fell in love with education in college. But when I got to Boston, my parents were really pressuring me to go into business because that was supposed to be where all the money was. And I mean, this was the early 90s and we were supposed to be making money. And this was, my dad was second generation immigrant from Germany. And so he was like, if you make money, you've done the American dream, right? So I worked for a brokerage firm for a little while and I was exploring like, why do people work here and what do people do? And I really missed teaching. So I left there and started teaching. And all that time I was wrestling with like, well, which career do I want to have? Which was synonymous with who do I want to become, right? And what I never really thought about was who do I want to become wasn't defined by my job. And so I was journaling. And so I started going to different churches. And I really wanted to just continue to explore. I was like, okay, there's a spiritual element of the world and I must be connected to it because that's what I was told when I was little. And I didn't really feel it when I was in high school and I was making that confirmation in that one church, but maybe I can find God if I go to the right church. So I started going to different churches in Boston based on where I was living. And they were all Christian churches because that was what was familiar to me. And I had a blast like finding different churches. So I went to, at one point, and I lived all over the city. I lived in like 9 different apartments in 10 years. And like in Boston, the whole city just like gets up and moves on September 1st. So based on where I was living, I would explore the churches nearby. At one point, I went to the Old North Church, which is the one like in the Revolutionary War or whatever, when they said 1 if by land, 2 if by sea, they hung the lanterns. I actually volunteered to teach Sunday school there because I was like, well, I'm a teacher. I can teach these kids. I went to Trinity Church, which is in Copley Square, which is like a very main part of town. And it's a big, old church there. I went to Catholic church with a bunch of my boyfriends because there was a very strong Catholic presence in Boston as well. So most of the guys that I was dating were also Catholic. So I was like, well, I'll check that out. And I even went to some churches that were like pop-up churches that back in the day when they were just starting to do like having a band at church instead of having the old music,
right.
And I went to 1 or 2 of those churches. And I was like looking for God and looking for a connection to God based on the institution. It didn't really occur to me to make the connection of, I was a little girl. I was told I have this little light of mine. I make my confirmation. I am saying as a Christian that I accept Jesus Christ as my personal savior and I have the Holy Spirit in me, even though I didn't get any emotional movement out of that circumstance. And then, so I'm like, well, I'm supposed to have this Holy Spirit in me. I knew I believed that, but I couldn't really figure out that connection in the institutions that I was attending. And I really struggled because there were a couple different boyfriends that I had that the relationships became very serious in my later 20s, and they were Catholic. And their families were very uncomfortable with the fact that I was not Catholic. And I was very uncomfortable because I was not allowed to take communion in the church service because I was not Catholic. And I was like, well, I do communion in my service. So, why can't I do it in yours? And then it became this whole thing. So I actually considered converting to Catholicism at one point because I didn't want to be excluded. I was like, well, if I'm going to marry him and he's Catholic, then if we have kids, I don't want to not be able to take communion with my kids. So I'll have to like change how I do church so that I could fit into. And that didn't work. So I just thought, okay, this isn't working for me. Like, why am I trying to force the experience of God here? Something's not right about that. And through my journaling and through my memories of what I had been told when I was little, it was just like, it's not supposed to be this way, is what my like intuition kept telling me, right? Like, God was not exclusive, right? Like, God wouldn't say that like your wife can't be part of this if it's in the union with me, etc. So I continued to struggle with that, but my journaling really kept me very centered. I read a ton of self-help books, so that helped me have a lot more self-awareness and depth. And so I just found myself embracing my spiritual identity, not when I was doing church in the sense of like going to the service and talking with the people. It wasn't in the coffee hour afterwards. It was in the more like private moments that I really felt like I was able to connect to that which was divine in me. And in the Christian faith, we would call that our Holy Spirit, right? And so I found myself really like bringing my journals to church. And then it was almost like I was taking notes, but like not as a student. Like it was like I was making this connection, this very highly personal connection. Like it wasn't about that I was following the rules of what the church said. It was about that I was there experiencing that which is divine in me, connecting in this external experience that was also sacred. And
I bet in your journaling at that time, it's like, even if you're hearing somebody say something, the Spirit could tell you something different that you need to hear. So what they're saying, you're gleaning something completely different from that. So you're in a space, it sounds like, to start connecting for yourself, right? Because I feel like the Spirit can speak to us. I mean, I've had that experience anyway, where someone's teaching something and what I got from the whole thing was something completely different, or I had a spiritual download of something else that didn't even have anything to do with what that person was actually talking about. Did you ever feel that way when you were journaling at church?
oh my gosh, it's like you were there next to me. Like that would happen all the time.
Why don't we bring our journals to church? I'm almost like, why don't we, you know what I mean? Like record what we're feeling in that moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That was just perfectly captured. That's exactly what I experienced. And meanwhile, in my 20s, I was studying to become a teacher. So I left the brokerage firm because it was not in alignment. There was something just, that little voice inside you that's like, this isn't for you. This isn't for you. And I left the brokerage firm and I went to become a teacher, and I wanted it so badly. I became a substitute teacher in Boston Public Schools. I remember my W-2 form for the entire year in 1995, I think it was $9,000.
Wow.
It was, a labor of love. It was not earning me the money that I was supposed to be earning.
Teachers more. They're like the ones teaching our kids. Oh. What grade did you teach?
So over the course of my career, I taught from the babies, like my pre-service training was all at the kindergarten, first grade level.
Aww,
and
cute.
My certification was pre-K through 9. When I actually continued to teach in the Boston Public Schools, I taught grades 3, 4, and 5.
Oh, okay.
And I taught them combined at one point. I taught a substantially separate class of learners with language-based special needs.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was also earning my master's at Simmons College in master's in moderate special needs, pre-K through 9. And I became a huge advocate in the Boston Public Schools for inclusion. So in the education world, inclusion practices were starting to become pretty popular in the mid to late 90s. And so I was one of the pioneers to take some of the students that were in substantially separate classrooms, and I actually taught a general ed 4th grade class and brought couple of those students with me into that environment to include them with the proper supports. And that was like pretty revolutionary in Boston public schools, because for decades they had always put learners with special needs in a separate location rather than them including them in the mainstream. And I became quite an advocate for inclusive practices. And I remember thinking, inclusion is really meaningful to me, and this is important. And so like I said, when I was talking about being like excluded in the Catholic Church, thinking that, well, but my God that I know is an inclusive God, right? So God doesn't exclude people. Like, all are welcome. They would always say all are welcome in this church, at whatever church I went to, and Jesus loves everybody. It didn't matter the denomination of the church that I went to. This was the message. And so I just remember feeling like this is so interesting that some practices can be more inclusive or exclusive than others. And that just didn't really resonate with me.
I do think we go through certain hardships to give us passion for something that we want to change in the future. And I love that you did have that experience of exclusion throughout your life, right? Where when it mattered in in the education system, you were like, no, I actually feel passionate. Like, I feel more passionate about that. Like, I think that our hardships, big or small, I think they are there to give us momentum in the future. I mean, I have felt that, even with just as simple as like, this isn't a spiritual thing necessarily, but just emotional regulation, being an emotionally deep person has been a huge stumbling block in my life. But I've learned that stumbling block was actually the thing that like has given me so much passion in my life now. So I love that you had this deep need for inclusion.
Yes.
Because that's who the God you knew. That's who you knew Jesus to be. I love that.
Yeah. And also, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I definitely felt very excluded because I was a religious minority when I was little.
Yeah.
Right. Then when we moved to the new town, I was excluded socially in a lot of ways. And so I've always been very sensitive to including others, because I knew what it felt like to not be part of the mainstream. And so you're right, that passion then surfaced in my education career. So in my 20s, I was pursuing my, master's in education. And so I was learning everything I could about teaching and learning, right? Just becoming the best teacher that I could possibly be. And so I realized that for me, the lens I looked at church was just like, these are just places where people are doing teaching and learning about God. And I was trying to find the right church. And I mean, if you're a parent, you've probably been through the process of like trying to find the right preschool. And then, as your kids get older and the kids are trying to find the right college. And so I just kind of figured like I would be able to connect to God more. And I would be like that. Then if I could just find the church that has the right kind of teaching and learning, and the right, I put like in air quotes, because like what was right for me, then that would be the ideal thing. Like that would be perfect. Then I could say like, I'm part of this church, I'm included here, and this is everything that I believe, and this is who I am. And so I continued to, through my 20s, church shop. After I turned 30 and was still single, living in Boston, and then freaked out because my clock was ticking and it's a college town. And I was like, now I'm never going to get married and have kids because everyone here is college age and they're all Catholic. I gotta go somewhere else. And so I ended up moving to Houston, Texas, where I had a job offer, a friend from college, and a guy who wanted to date me. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to Houston. Never been to Houston, Texas before. Sounds like a really good reason to go to Houston.
Was that a big change for you? Was that a pretty big cultural shift for you?
Yes and no. I joke that I learned that Texans are actually very similar to New Yorkers in that they are all raised to think that they live in the center of the world.
Okay. And California too. I feel like California, Texas, and New York.
Yeah.
We all three have that in common.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, I understand this mentality.
Okay.
Thinking that the way you do it is the right way to do it.
Like, they're a very proud state, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But so is California.
Yeah,
Haven't you noticed? We're a very proud state,
yeah.
I feel like, yeah.
And, my experience with having been from New York, like New Yorkers get real proud of their New York thing. So that wasn't a big departure. I mean, the humidity was a big change. Driving everywhere was a big change. I was used to riding my bike, or literally I would scooter.
Everything's close quarters.
In Boston, I was able to walk and ride my bike and scooter everywhere and take the T, and that didn't exist in Houston. But so when I went to Houston, my friend from work became my roommate, and she was a Christian woman. And so we decided to go to church, and we went to the biggest Baptist church in Houston. So I went back to Baptist roots. And by this time now, this is like the early 2000s, and like the rock bands opening up the church services is like a big deal. And they had an amazing band. It was called First Baptist in Houston. Maybe it was the second biggest, because I think Joel Osteen's church was actually the biggest church in Houston. But this was an actual labeled Baptist church, and First Baptist was the biggest. And so it was enormous. It was like going to a rock concert every time you went there. And I thought, okay, this is going back to my roots. Like, this is going to be it, you know? And she and I did Bible study, and I had done Bible study in Boston a couple of times. And the same thing happened. Like, it wasn't about the subscription to the church. It wasn't about the subscription to the doctrine. It wasn't about being in the Bible study. It was about the conversations that happened within the Bible study, which were very intimate. It was about the intimate experience of the journaling. And so I just still somehow felt like there was a disconnect between that which was divine in me, that I knew was divine and inside of me, and like this idea of institutional practice outside of me. Like, it still wasn't aligning. And then I met my husband, and I ended up moving to Scottsdale, Arizona. We were long distance. He was living in San Francisco. It ended up, he got promoted. So I moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. And we met within the year. We were engaged. Within half a year of our engagement, we got married, and 2 months after that, we were pregnant. So it was like boom, boom, boom. But he was in his mid 30s. I was in my early 30s. We knew what we wanted. We knew each other was the one. I still believe he's the one. I'm so happy to be with him today.
I love that.
The crazy thing is that, like, we really did not know each other very well when we got married, because we had been long distance. And it was so quick, we probably knew each other as well as like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette on TV. You know each other when they get together.
Yeah.
And I always had told myself, I want a man who wants to go to church. So we ended up having some kids. We moved to San Francisco. Then we moved to the Bay Area, and the kids were 2 and 5.
And you have 2 sons.
2 sons,
Okay.
2 boys. Yep. They were 2 and 5. And I just said, look, it's important to me. Like, we're settled now. Like, we know that we're going to raise our kids here. This was in the East Bay of San Francisco. Like, it's important to me that we go to church. And he was like, no problem. So we went to the most popular church in town.
Which is what?
Which was a Presbyterian church.
Okay.
So, I cover all the bases here.
I love it. Yes.
So that was a Presbyterian church. It was the most popular church in town. And it was great because we told our 5-year-old, like, the kids would go in the beginning of the service when the band was playing, and then they would leave to go to Sunday school. And I was like, great, they have a good Sunday school. We're checking all the boxes here. This is going to be perfect. And it was actually really funny because we let our 5-year-old Tanner at the time pick where to sit in church. And so he went right up to the front row.
It's my kind of kid.
And so there we were for several years. We were in the front row of church, and my husband really enjoyed going. Our pastor was very dynamic and very great speaker, great messages. And so, like, I was like, okay, this is it. This is everything. This is the front row. And then at one point, I think this is when that pastor, either right before that pastor came or maybe just after, I can't remember, that church decided to switch from one presbytery to another presbytery. So, like, churches can register to be part of different organizations of churches, like groups of churches.
Okay.
And so they sent out a message to the membership saying that this is the new presbytery we're going to be part of. And like, they like sent the link to the documents that outlined the doctrine of the new presbytery. And in this doctrine, and I still have it in a folder today because I printed it out, and I was like, this is nuts. They did not condone divorce, which wasn't a shocker because this is not, most Christian denomination churches, do not condone divorce. And they also did not condone interracial marriage.
Wow.
Now, I am at this point married to a biracial man. So my husband is part Japanese and part white.
What were you thinking? What were you thinking of that? I mean,
so I was just like, wait.
And how many years ago was this?
This was when, let's see, Tanner was probably around 8 years old, 9 years
So
old.
like 10 years ago?
10 years old. Yeah. So this is about 10 years ago.
Wow. Only
Yeah.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was part of the document. What did you think when you read that?
Immediately, I was like, we can't go to this church anymore. Like this, I can't do this. And I think I might have wrestled with it for a little while,
Yeah,
like maybe
of
not
course.
right away. I wasn't like all up in arms right away, but I was like, this does not sit okay with me. Like my children are biracial, like my husband's biracial. Like I was, my whole career, I've served children who are Black and brown across the country in under-resourced communities. I was just like, this is like the idea of being exclusive racially was just not okay with me. And so here's the exclusion theme again.
Yep.
And I was just crushed because like this was like
Front
this is my
row.
whole dream. We're
Right.
front row. I got a husband who goes to church. Like my kids are in a
Yes.
good Sunday school. Like I'm, and when I would bring my little notes with me. I
Yeah.
wouldn't journal, but I would take little notes in the service. We had an amazing pastor. It was very dynamic. Like, and I
It's
just
like
thought,
you have the package. You have the shiny
whole
package we
package.
all want, right?
yeah.
Wow.
So we didn't make a big fuss over it. We just didn't go. We stopped attending and we went church shopping. And that took a couple of years and I still couldn't find an institution that was inclusive in all of the ways I needed it to be. And I couldn't find the service that my husband really liked the rock band, but my kids really needed a good Sunday school. It was like trying to find like Mr. Right all over again. You got to check all the boxes and it's got to fit everything. And I just thought, why is it so hard to connect to God? Like, why is it so hard? Like, why does it have to be so complicated? One thing I forgot to say is that also in my 20s, I discovered yoga. And so I started doing a lot of yoga, teaching yoga. I became a yoga instructor before there was a thing called yoga teacher certification. Like there were no certifications. You just practiced with someone who was like literally a guru, and then you said who you practiced with, and then people would hire you because it wasn't like in every gym at this time. And so I remember delighting in the part of yoga where I got to meditate because it was the first time I had really been introduced to meditating. Because if you think about it, and I mean, most church services and any of the ones that I've been to, like there's a quiet moment for maybe 20 seconds. They don't say, okay, now is the time where, dear congregation, you're going to sit for 5 minutes with just yourself and your thoughts. Go,
Yeah.
They don't do that. And so this idea of like sitting with my thoughts and meditating was really cool, but I was terrible at it. Because
And you know what's
I'd never done it
interesting is
before.
everyone is. That is
Yeah.
that I 100% know that you have to learn to meditate. You have to
Yes.
learn how to quiet your mind. It's a
practice.
learned practice. So anyone that's like, I'm a bad meditator, you have to practice it. It's just like saying, I can't lift 100 pounds. Like you have to start at the 3-pound dumbbell, right? You have to learn and practice to be a good meditator. And when you do, it's worth its weight in gold.
100%. But I didn't do that in my 20s and I didn't do it in my 30s because I signed up, even though I was a yoga teacher and doing yoga, I just decided I wasn't a good meditator. So that part of yoga, like, isn't going to be my big thing.
Totally.
It's going to be more about like
The movement.
and the practice and the flexibility and, and the release. So it was interesting though, because I chose to disregard the meditative practice. And I think in hindsight, it was because it was just unfamiliar. Like you said, you're obviously not going to lift 100-pound weights
Yeah,
right away.
and if you
like
try, you're
I
like,
didn't
"Ouch,
know
this
how.
hurts. I don't want to."
I wasn't really taught how to meditate. It was just taught that you meditate.
Yeah.
And so I needed a little bit more structure and guidance in that. And so I didn't choose it. So we found another church. The kids called it the little church because there was like barely anybody who attended this church. And it was at the edge of town where we used to live instead of like right in the middle of town where the big popular church was. And the kids had a very nice Sunday school there, and they were very inclusive in all of their practices, rainbow flag outside the front and welcoming of anybody. And they had a lot of mixed races. They had a lot of mixed marriages. They had a lot of, you name it, colors, backgrounds. And I was like, okay, this feels good to be in this institutional environment that is very inclusive. And they did not have the rock band, and it was the old-fashioned organ and the old-fashioned hymns. And my husband was like, no way, like we can't do this. He was like, I cannot do this anymore. So I took my kids for a while, and finally I was just like, I give up. So we gave up. I basically gave up on church. And I was a really busy mom. I was always working part-time or full-time at that time. I was coaching teachers as an instructional coach. I became an administrator at a high school, and I was a dean of curriculum and instruction, and I was coaching new teachers. I was coaching school leaders as a consultant. And so I was like trying to do it all, right? And women who've had children and who've worked at the same time, whether part-time or full-time, and I've done both part-time and full-time, you have so much on your plate that I just was, okay, we're buckling down here. Like I just have to like get all my things that I have to do taken care of. So I became really good at functioning. I became really good at serving, and I became really good at carrying responsibility. And, you know, because I was a wife, a mother, a teacher, you know, doing all the things. And I was really good at serving. And so that to me was just like, okay, now I'm like worn really, really thin. And so I just kind of like stepped away from faith because God was like confused with institution. And I stepped away from faith because in the institutions that I was in, then it was all about service, and you need to serve. And it was all about teaching and learning about God. Like it was all about the stuff that was like more external and externally energetically motivated. And like my soul wasn't fed. My values were not aligned, right? By going to multiple different places. And so I just was like, screw it. I'm over it. Like I have shit to do. And that's what I did. And so for many years, I just kind of like kept on going without paying attention to that which is divine in myself, without paying attention to God and God's speaking and God talking. And I just kind of like rejected God for a long time. And so the pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, we were traveling as a family. So we were already homeschooling for the year. We were already not seeing people. But I made sure while we were doing that we would go to church in the different places that we went, because I figured, well, maybe they'll, like I was always holding out hope that there'd be another institution somewhere. So we did that because I wasn't as stressed out when we were traveling and homeschooling.
And at that time with the pandemic, it was like Zoom.
Church,
right?
I remember we did Zoom Easter.
Like
right?
I kind of feel like that was probably like more of a toe in the water. Instead of going, you could actually just Zoom in and get the feel, right?
Because I started to feel bad that like now my kids didn't have Sunday school, and I started to worry about like what were my kids being like, how were they doing teaching and learning about God, right? Like no one was teaching them about God.
Right.
Well, duh, I could have been teaching them about God.
Yes.
Like I did, you know, I could have been modeling things about God, but like talking about God, talking about any kind of spiritual practice and or religious practice was not done in my family ever. Like we went to the place where you did God.
You know what? And I think a lot of people fall into that. You go to the place to go, it's more external, not internal.
Right.
So we go here to do the thing, and that can leave you feeling empty.
Yeah, 100%.
And like, when it's all external, like this thing outside of me versus what is the symbol of this thing for me internally, right?
And I was no longer journaling, right?
Yeah.
So I was not connecting to anything that was divine within myself at all.
This was, so you started noticing this when? Like
probably, I mean, after we left that larger popular Presbyterian church, and you know, I think it was for another year or two that we went to what we called the little church. That was like a more Christian left church. After I just sort of like gave up because my husband didn't want to come with us anymore, and the kids, they didn't love going there because there weren't a lot of kids, so they were like, oh, it's just kind of us in the classroom.
And the community matters for kids.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So it was right around that time. So I guess Tanner was in about 5th grade. It was probably now close to 8 or 10 years ago.
Okay.
And so I try to like bring it back here and there. And I told my kids, the only thing I ever said was, it's important to know God. Your number one thing is to know God. Just know God. However you want to interpret that, like whatever religious practice you want, just know God. Because I knew that I didn't want to tell them that like they had to be part of something that was excluding of anything. But I figured I'd just let them figure it out for themselves. So we moved from the East Bay of San Francisco to San Clemente 5 years ago, and it was January of 2021, and that was, you know, right when the pandemic was still happening. So
was it a lot looser here than up there, would you say, when you moved? 5 years ago.
For practices, yeah, like socially.
Yeah, socially.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because we moved from Arizona 5 years ago about the same time to here. And it was like, we were back in the pandemic. So we were in Arizona. That felt like the wild, wild west, just coming and going and doing what you want. And then we moved here. And we're like, whoa, we were back in masks.
Oh, that's funny because I had a different experience.
Yeah.
I was like, it was really buttoned up in the East Bay.
Right.
And it was like, what COVID down here? You know, speakeasies and all that. And I was just like, okay.
And we felt opposite. We felt like we stepped back into the pandemic. So.
Depends on your perspective where you're coming from, right?
So funny.
So the idea of church shopping, again, was just like, yeah, no. I just thought, I can't do this. Like this, I've done this so many times in my life. I have bounced around. I've probably had more churches than I had boyfriends, and I had tons of boyfriends. So I was just like, I'm done.
I love that you call it church shopping.
Yeah.
I've not heard that before.
Oh, really?
No, I haven't.
And so I was just like, I didn't feel like it. My kids were finishing 8th grade and finishing 5th grade when we moved here. And I was just like, well, Sunday school's done, right? Like they don't really do Sunday school anymore when they get that old. They start doing youth group. And I thought, I don't feel comfortable recommending they go into any particular youth group unless I know what the youth group is all about, what the doctrine is that they're subscribing to, what the institution values and holds, like what the rules are, and I say that in air quotes, the rules are for lack of a better expression, because I knew that I wanted a very inclusive practice for where we would do faith and do God. Mm-hmm. And so I was just like, I don't have the bandwidth. We're moving, they're starting high school, they're starting middle school. Like I don't have the bandwidth. And that was also, now I'm thrown into perimenopause. And perimenopause means you don't have bandwidth for jack, right?
Yeah.
No bandwidth for anything. And I'm just, and I wasn't working because I had left my job teaching people how to become teachers at Mills College, where I worked in the East Bay before we went on our trip. And then once we finished our trip, we coincidentally moved at the end of that. So I wasn't working and I was just floundering. I put on 20 pounds. I was irritable. I was cranky, all the perimenopause symptoms. And Tanner and Cole were beginning their high school and middle school.
And then you're in a new area.
We're in a new area, trying to get to know the community. And we were pretty well known in our former community. So I was kind of enjoying the anonymity for a while. Okay. So I was like, I don't really want to connect to community right now. I don't need to go church shopping for that reason too. And so I just kind of floundered as a person for a while, for a couple of years. And I just wasn't happy. I wasn't doing any of the things that I used to do that used to honor who I am. I hadn't realized dreams that I had. I wasn't doing anything career-wise that was a career that I loved. I wasn't serving really. I was volunteering at the country club. I'm very good at volunteering. And so I've done crazy volunteering my whole life, and I was doing that, but just, volunteering for women's golf just kind of wasn't cutting it for me. As far as I was like, I have more to give. I need more. And I just was miserable. And I started going on walks every day, and I would just walk for 15 minutes and then go back. We lived in the Pier Bowl. I would walk to the pier, walk back. And I just started doing that, and I started taking care of my health. And that was like, wow, I can feel better. I can get stronger. I can be nicer to my family. Okay, there's hope here. And I really got after my physical health. So for the last 4 years, I dropped the weight. I navigated all my perimenopausal symptoms. I'm, as of 3 days ago, by the way, I am officially in menopause. Where is my party? But I really got after my physical health. And then I decided to get after some of the intellectual pursuits that I had left undone. And parenting of older teenagers means that you have boys that individuate from you. So I had emotional regulation became a priority, and I've found these massive emotional challenges. Mm-hmm. And I decided, meanwhile, about a year ago, that I would become an entrepreneur and start a personal coaching business. Instead of going back to teaching and coaching teachers and school leaders, I would coach women who are, kind of in the same position that I was in. I will shepherd them along in finishing dreams, finishing projects, tackling limiting beliefs about themselves, emotionally regulating themselves. And I was really excited because I had so many skills in building physical capacity, building intellectual capacity, building emotional and self-regulation capacity. And I was like, feeling like I was on top of the world. And you probably know this because I know you're an entrepreneur as well. And you become an entrepreneur and you get thrown some pretty hefty personal growth challenges.
You know what? I am going to actually amen on that one a million times over. If you want to be an entrepreneur, life is going to give you the challenges to build you into who that looks like. I'm not kidding. When you said that, I'm like, I have finally come to understand that truth as even like pursuing podcasts, and I'm doing different interview projects outside of this right now and coaching, right? I have been given life circumstances to grow me in these capacities, which I'm so grateful for, but you have to know that. Like you have to clue into that and lean into the challenges that are growing you, right? Do you feel that way? Do you feel that like when you choose to expand your life brings you opportunity, and it's usually really rough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The minute you decide to follow your purpose and align on your path of your soul, it makes me want to get emotional. It's like there's so many opportunities for you. I mean, think about your whole life. But I think there's like a hidden genius in all of us that comes very natural. So natural, in fact, that like it's so God-given that you don't even know it's a gift.
100%.
And when you align with that, with what you're here to do, with your purpose, what you came here to do, it feels so good to be aligned, but you're tested to the limits. That's how I feel. And that's
I felt the exact same way, because I felt like, okay, this is making sense. Like if I build this business, like this is what, and I was afraid to build a business. I rejected being an entrepreneur for many years because I held so many limiting beliefs about myself.
For sure.
Right.
You have to do some inner work there to be able to go be an entrepreneur.
100%.
Wouldn't you say?
And I was like, well, okay, I didn't think I could get myself, I just wanted to be healthy. I didn't think I would get this healthy. Like, and it's not like if I figured that out, if I put all the energy and time and research and figuring it out into my health and I got these results, then if I put the same amount of energy and thought and work into being an entrepreneur, like I can do it. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was like, I think this is what I'm called to do. I was very passionate about having a calling when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah. Like, and you mean like a purpose in
like
life?
A purpose. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like a divine calling,
Yes.
like an alignment of like, this is what I'm here, on this planet to do.
Oh, I love that.
And so I decided to follow my calling. That this was like the second time in my life that I've gotten a sense of a calling and a purpose. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go with it. And it resulted in frustration and failure multiple times for like all different silly entrepreneurial types of reasons. And I was so miserable and depleted about like 6 months into it, about little over, well, I guess it's about 8 months ago now. And I was just like, okay, like I have tried everything else. I've gotten myself healthy. I've gotten my head screwed on straight. I've tackled my limiting beliefs. I've known how to self-regulate. I'm working on like the finally finishing touches of my parenting. And the missing piece is connecting to spirit, connecting to that which is divine in myself, connecting to God. And I was just like, I got to give this a try. Like, I got to come back to this because I have nothing left. Like, I've done, like, I can't, out student myself and get this work done. It doesn't matter how much weight I can lift. I can't be the best parent if I don't like honor that which is divine in me. And I just was like, I have no other choice right now because I don't have anything else. And so it's not like a rock bottom, like I was, on meth and then I hit bottom and then I like came back
Luckily,
from it. Like,
right?
I don't have one of these like glamorous stories that has like the major ups and the major downs, but I was just like being a regular person and being a regular mom. And, I was indoctrinated at a very young age to be in like a more like Christian oriented way of thinking about religion and God, but it was always like God out there. Even when I was practicing yoga, I was introduced to so many other ideas of spirituality and religion. And when I was dating, I also dated people who were of very many different faiths and backgrounds. Dated a few people who were Jewish, some people who were atheists, some people who were familiar and had family who were practicing Muslim, but they didn't practice themselves. And so we had a lot of conversation around that. And so I did so much like teaching and learning around God and looking for God outside and trying to find like the God outside that I just forgot about the God that was just in me. And so for me now, 8 months ago, I just decided, okay, I have to connect to that and honor that which is divine in myself. And that was really exciting, but also scary.
Because you're like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? For yourself.
Because what does that mean? Like, and hell no, was I going to go church shopping, right? I don't want to have to find it externally. I don't want to have to go to teach and learn more. I have taught and learned. Like, I know a ton about the Bible. I know a lot about other religions because I explored them, not just, worship practices within the Christian faith. And so I was like, what can I do? And I started just literally, I was making a morning routine for myself. And I just said, I need something that grounds me spiritually. And I ChatGPT'd things that ground you spiritually.
I love it.
Because I was like, it's not going to be going to church once a week. I've already tried that. And I'm kind of like rejecting that at this point. But not because it's inherently bad, just because it didn't speak to me. And I'm like, what can I do every single day? I don't want to just do once a week. What can I do every single day to ground me spiritually? And I came up with this whole list.
What was the list? Can you tell us?
Things like,
because the listeners are listening and I know in their minds they're like, what is the list? And they're probably chat GPTing it too.
Right.
But tell us like some of the things that stood out.
Very basic things like journal, go for a walk in nature, meditate, pray, read a book of scripture of whatever is the origin of your religious practice. Read a book written about the religious practice that you have, read a book of affirmations, do a devotional, things like that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, well, I'm a busy mom and I'm a huge fan of multipliers. So I will pray and walk in nature at the same time.
Yeah, there you go.
So I decided, and I went on a walk on the beach every morning and I just decided to pray. And then I was like, okay, I can't pray in my head on a beach walk just by myself because I get very distracted. So I was like, this isn't going to work for me. So I decided I have to pray out loud. And so that was great because then I was praying out loud. But then I felt stupid walking around praying, like I would look like I was talking to myself and feeling like I was talking to myself. So I decided to pray and record my prayers so that I was praying now I'm praying to my own entity of God, right? Mm-hmm. But it's being recorded, so I feel like it's going somewhere.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, great. So now I'm talking to God. And then I kind of felt like this is over a course of many days and weeks.
Of course.
And then it evolved into, okay, I need a structure for what I'm talking about because I can't just ramble. Like rambling isn't useful to me. So then I was like, well, I hear that gratitude prayer is, Harvard says if you do 6 gratitudes per day, if you mention them per day, you'll be able to have great gratitude or whatever. You'll have better life, blah, blah, blah.
And I do think it's funny because I have to always understand why I'm doing something. Because I've heard about that with the gratitude prayer too. Like, having gratitude, waking up and thanking God for all these things, right? Even when life is falling apart or even the hard stuff, right? But I do think there is something that our physical body needs because our spirit is all knowing. Our spirit's all knowing. And it's the one connected deeply to God and Christ. It's our bodies that we have to just live in this physical world that to me, when I am grateful, you know what it does? It helps my brain see what's so good in my life. I start to realize, wow, because you can rehearse all the things that are not going right. That's very easy to do. But when you start rehearsing the things that are, like the things you're actually grateful for, there is something to that. To me, I'm like, it changes your focus.
It has completely shifted my life.
It shifts your focus. If you want to look at it on a more physical level, it's like it literally shifts your focus to the things that are good. Because I promise anyone listening right now, I don't care how much in hell you think you are. I promise you, you're breathing. I'm grateful that I'm breathing today. I'm grateful that my heart is beating today. There are things to be grateful for that will move and shift your focus. I think it's miraculous, honestly. I think it helps our physical selves, our brains see what we're grateful for. And our soul rejoices in that, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, there is so much neuroscience behind this practice of gratitude, but there's also a lot of neuroscience behind the emotional regulation that you get from the action of prayer, right? And from speaking aloud your thoughts and desires that are positive, right? So there's a whole area of focus of manifestation that is out there that, in my opinion, also aligns with God's desire for us to have abundance,
totally.
Right? And so there's neuroscience evidence to it, but there's also just countless people who just tell tales of like, give it a try, like just give it a try and see if it works. And at this time, this is a cool story. So I was kind of struggling to put some structure to my spiritual grounding practice each morning, but I could tell I was coming back into my own faith. And I don't mean my own like religion. I mean like my honoring of that which is divine in myself.
Internal.
And so I was in a yoga class one day and I chatted up with some gals. And this is where I think God has an amazing sense of humor.
Oh, yeah.
Because these gals were phenomenal gals. I've barely seen them since, but they're darling. And their names were Joy and Grace. Okay? And Joy and Grace, after a couple of conversations, invited me to go to church with them. And I was like, okay, sure. Like,
which church?
Shoreline.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, sure. Like we went there for Christmas and Easter one time. We did like the good thing. We're just at least going to go once or twice a year, even if I couldn't muster up the church shopping piece. And I was just like, I brought my journal and I sat there and I took notes, and exactly what you were describing before happened, where I've like got so much of my own connection out of it. I definitely knew that I was connecting to that which is divine in myself. I definitely knew that I am on the right spiritual path. I didn't come away thinking I want to go here every single Sunday for a variety of reasons, not because anything particular happened that was upsetting.
But it was a place that helped you connect to your
I just
internal.
was like, this is a sign. Like go. It was like I just kept getting this message, like go on your path. Just connect every day, and it will be fine.
Just connect every day, and it will be fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, and so it totally like dawn breaks over Marblehead, right? Like, oh, like I just need to do the practice. I don't need to have the institution. I don't need to have the doctrine. I don't need to have the rules. I don't need to have the regulations. I don't need the ceremony. I don't need the donuts. I don't need, like, 'cause they always have donuts afterwards. I don't need to be doing all of the teaching and the learning and the serving and all of the things that are just generally depleting of my energy. I need to be doing the practices that get me aligned and connected to that which is divine, to my purpose, to my values every single day. And consistency and commitment is when you arrive at the thing that you want. So you think you're going towards something, but it's really the consistency and commitment and the journey that is the more valuable. And so like when I decided to become healthy, I didn't say I want to lose these 20 pounds. I just said I want to be healthy. So what did I have to do? I had to engage in the practices every single day that made me healthy.
Yeah.
And when I wanted to be an emotionally regulated person, it wasn't like, oh, I want to not have a conniption. Well, I did want to not yell at my kids when they're 16 and driving me nuts. But the idea is, it's not about the goal of not yelling at my kids.
Yeah.
It's about being a person who is emotionally self-regulated. So I have to practice every single day the practices, the things that a person who is emotionally self-regulated does.
Yeah.
If I want to, I didn't say like, oh, I want to get, a certain like accolades intellectually. It's someone who is continuing to stimulate their brain, does things every single day intellectually to foster that. So it was like, oh, this is what I have to do to foster my spiritual self. Yeah. And it was not that I need to go to God. I don't have to like drive to church to be to God. I don't have to see God that way. God is not external to me. I already know God lives on the inside of me. I believe God lives on the inside of every person, regardless of denomination. I believe that every single person has that which is divine in them, whether or not they recognize it, honor it, practice it, nurture that. I believe that it's there for every single person. And so like, I don't have to go outside of me. I just have to go be a person who is spiritually connected every single day. And so I just started these practices. So the structure I put to my prayer was, okay, I'm going to say 6 things of gratitude. Well, now which 6 things? So then I needed more structure, because if I'm a person that if I don't have structure, like I can't access as well. And this is like what I help people do is I help them put systems and structures to help be on the path to meet their goals.
Which I think is your gift too, that you did in the education world. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You were very structured. I love it. I love that.
Yeah. And that's what I do for my clients now. So I was like, okay, well, what are my top 6 priorities? My top 6 priorities are God, meaning that which is divine internally, but also that which is divine externally. My health comes first, because if I don't put my own oxygen mask on first, I can't help anybody. I can't do anything. I can't serve my purpose. My husband, my kids, my community, and my work. And so I say something that I'm grateful for in each one of those things in my prayer every day. I also ask for help with something in each one of those things every day. So I start with gratitude. So I'm coming from an orientation of love and not fear. And then, if there's something that I'm wrestling with, I'll put it out there. So now I get into a little bit of manifesting kind of types of things. If I am celebrating something, then I'm just even more gratitude, right? If I am curious about something, I ask questions, and then I just sit back and watch, because these little moments will then start showing up in my life, and like I can tell that things are more spiritually aligned.
So good. And you do the more, because I call it my morning routine as well. Do you do that first thing in the morning? Mm-hmm. And how long?
I don't do my prayer first thing. So I get my physical, intellectual, and emotional and environmental self all like taken care of and regulated before I go into prayer, which I know is a little bit counterintuitive, because
I think whatever works
many
for
people
you,
like
right?
to get up and do
time.
their spiritual work first. For me, when I am environmentally like grounding and I'm just like tidying up my house, and when I'm making my bed, and when I am physically grounding and I'm working out, and when I'm doing some journaling about whatever it is that's intellectually grounding me for that day, my mind, like things come up that come into my mind, and then I take them to prayer.
Oh, I love that.
So it sort of like primes me for my prayer. Whereas if I just open my eyes and the first thing I do is pray, I feel like I don't have as much to kind of like to bring to it. And I get a lot of divine inspiration in the parts of my morning routine that are physically, intellectually, emotionally, and environmentally grounding, so that the spiritual piece is actually last on purpose, because then I go into my day like fully at peace. Yeah. And sometimes that means it's like in the car on the drive home, like from being at the gym, right?
Yeah.
But it served me well to do it that way. And I record all of my prayers, and now sometimes they're 5 minutes long. I've had prayers that have been an hour long. Like I'll have to actually budget time in my calendar for that.
I love it.
And usually they're about 15 minutes long now.
What do you think your morning routine has done for you?
Oh, being grounded, it's like I said before, having my oxygen mask put on, first. And the spiritual part of my morning routine isn't just prayer. I also do meditation. So I also, and this is more recent, I will look at some sort of piece that is connected to like not a devotional necessarily like per se, but like something that is about spirituality. Like I'll read something that is about spirituality. So those are 3 things that I do each day regarding spiritual practice. And then in my sunset walk, I say, which is part of my evening routine, that's when I say like a sunset prayer. And I go back to the 6 things, and it's usually the 6 things about that day.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I don't do my sunset walk as consistently as I do my morning routine just because life happens and there's meetings and there's this and that and the other thing.
Well, it's like, the whole object lesson where it's like put the big stones in first.
Yes.
Then the little pebbles, then the sand fills it in. I mean,
that's exactly what my morning routine does for me.
That's what it does for me. And it's like I've gotten busy before where I've like put it off. I'll be like, oh, I'll go do pickleball at 9 a.m. instead of sitting down and doing my routine. And my day is just different. I mean, I'm getting to my routine 80% of the time, which to me is, I mean, you can't be perfect at it, but for me, it's like getting at it 80% of the time. But I will say, I remember, just waking up and just hitting the ground running, got my to-do list, go to 10 stores, busy, and just burning out and having no revelation on where my life's going, what I even want to do, my kids' needs, you know what I'm saying? Like
100%,
for me,
I was there.
It's like it's like you're just getting taken with the wind as you go, and you're just cleaning up messes as you go versus, I love to feel cozy. Everyone does their mornings differently. Some people need movement and some people need, this cozy environment. And mine is, I'll go work out first thing in the morning and then come home. And then I send my kids off to school and I have 2 hours at least that I just cozy in front of my, fireplace with a blanket. And that is how I have found. That's where this whole podcast came from, was my morning routine. That's where, I'm even creating a workbook. That my morning routine has given me this connection with God and my purpose, understanding who I am, what I'm here to do. I'm like, I don't know how, and my method of getting there is similar in some ways, right? Where it's like having some kind of routine in the morning. I love how you kind of structured yours and broke yours down, but similar to yours, where I would have no direction without it.
Oh, 100%. Me too. And now my favorite part of my morning, like I get the same things out of my morning routine that exactly you're describing. I'm like, yes, I hear you. And my favorite part of my morning routine now are the things that I do for my spiritual grounding. I do it last because it's like my reward. Like if I do all the other things, now I get to do that. And at first I felt really uncomfortable and wonky about it because I was just like, well, I don't really know how to do this. I wasn't taught that. The bizarre thing is that how many churches did I go to? And I was never taught like a structure for prayer. I was taught the Lord's Prayer, but I was never taught like a structure for prayer. I was never taught a structure for daily practice. And maybe there was an assumption by all of those churches that it was being modeled for me at home, right? Like, so I never watched somebody do morning meditation. I never watched somebody do morning prayer, whatever. And so now my kids still don't see me do that. My friends don't see me do that. Like people, this is very, very private.
Yeah.
And this has been huge for me.
Yes.
And
transformative.
Which is why this podcast is going to be like, wait, what? What is she talking about? Because, it's very, very private. And so I kind of stumbled in the beginning to stumble back into my faith and my spirituality. But my faith is still not defined by religion. It's still not defined by a church. I can say that I hold a bias toward Christianity only because that is the way that I like came to know about that which is divine in myself, but it's not the only way that I've come to learn how to identify and strengthen and connect with that which is divine within myself. And where I get tripped up now is with language around my spirituality. So that was actually the thing I was most nervous about coming into this podcast. Because culture, bear with me for a second, stay with me as
I'm right here with
play
you.
this out. So culture is learned behavior, right? And a religious practice, a religious institution serves to provide a sense of culture where you have a sense of learned behavior. And it also provides to teach and learn about God and worship, right? And maybe it's, for some religions, it's many gods, and for some religions, it's one. And culture is learned behavior. And what we learn within that behavior is we learn language. And we learn how to talk about God and talk about the experience of the religion as well as the experience of spiritual moments and the experience of practicing that religion or practicing your honoring of that which is divine in you, right? And there is certain language within each religious practice. And so, for example, when Christians say they found God, oftentimes that will be they came to Christ, right? This is a phrase that's often used. Or they will use certain language around the journey in both religious practice and spiritual faith. And for me, I struggle now because the only language that I knew for a very long time was rooted in Christianity. I see myself as a Christian because I have done a Christian's journey, but I do not subscribe to all of the doctrine and practices within all Christian religions and faiths, right? And so when I continue to use language that will then signify to someone else that this is the religion that I'm part of, or this is the rules or doctrine that I espouse, like if that language cues that bothers me because I don't want assumptions being made about me and who I am as a divine being based on the church that I attend or the spiritual books that I read or the language that I use. I like that it gives me an opportunity to teach and learn, that it gives religions an opportunity to teach and learn about God. I like that I've had the opportunity through certain vernacular to learn about God because I don't think my relationship with God that I have would be as strong if I didn't learn about a God who is all knowing, a God who is all loving, a God who is all forgiving, a God who has abundance, right? But I don't like when it implies that I have certain political beliefs. I don't like when the language, if I use that language, it implies that I go to a certain church or I practice a certain way. And so I struggle with ever talking about my faith because it's like I've historically would rather be silent. And that's why I was really moved when you invited me to come here and talk about this, because it's not okay for me to be silent about the fact that I am a divine person. We are all divine beings and we all deserve to be honoring that which is divine in us. And there is a peace that is, and in the Christian faith, the phrase is a peace that surpasses all understanding, right?
Yes.
There is a peace regardless of religious affiliation that you will find from honoring that which is divine in you. And my daily practice is honoring that which is divine in me. And so I'm finding God every single day. Like I'm finding him over and see, do you see that? I even use the pronoun him, right? Yeah. So this is very highly Christian.
Yeah.
And I actually struggle with that because I'm finding that which is divine. I'm finding God. And it's almost like language is too restrictive of the beauty of what happens, of the beauty of connecting. To me, that is greater than the sum of the parts. It's not just one watershed moment where I've found God and then my life is totally different. It's finding God every single day is the most beautiful experience that I can imagine. And I would just hope that from your podcast and from everyone sharing their stories, that they will find a God, those gods, the God, and they will seek in whatever way they need to, and they will practice in whatever way they need to honor that which is divine within them and honor that relationship to the divine that they have, because I think that is it's literally glorious.
Oh, and see, it's interesting because she knew I was LDS. So she was like, "Are you sure you want me on your podcast?" And I was like, "Well, there's a reason I didn't feel prompted to call it, people finding the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's not the title I was given." And so,
or even people finding Christ.
People finding Christ is people finding God. And I have felt prompted to have various stories of people finding God. What does that look like? And I love finding common ground with people because, throughout my life, I've attended many churches when I was younger, right? I lived up in LA, checked out many churches. I have been to retreats. I did a couple Native American retreats, right? That were non-medicinal, but very amazing. I learned so many truths there. I've explored a lot of different cultural things that to me, I've always just felt like I am a truth seeker. And I love when I can find truth in, as we're talking today, like the morning routine, for example. So much truth. And look how where you were able to find that truth was very different than my journey to finding that truth, but we both landed on the truth. And so to me, I just feel like there's so many different ways to find God. And I love how intentional you live your life. It's easy to be like, I go every Sunday. That's not an intentional life of finding God just because you go every Sunday and then you're there and you're checked out and you're on your phone. I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect at that either. I'm just saying, listening to you, you're living an intentional life finding God. You're intentionally asking, what next? Help me. I'm going to give you 2 hours to tell me what to do here. Like my day isn't completely busy. I'm going to give you 30 minutes, an hour. I'm going to give you my evening walk to talk to me. Right. And it's just like, that's an intentional way of living. And that's what I love. It's not about religion necessarily. It's about building that relationship to the divine, to God, to what does that look like for you? And so anyway, I love that. I love that this is a unique story to what has been on my podcast. I welcome it. I think it's amazing to just hear other people's stories and perspectives and where they've come from and how they found truth in their lives. And you're just a beautiful soul. I knew that the minute we went to lunch. I was like, she's great. I love this.
Thank you. And I mean, you glow as well and you radiate. And I just knew we had an affinity. And I just feel so welcome here. And I really appreciate you listening to my story. I don't see it as a very exciting one, but if it can serve the purpose of inspiring.
It's so rich. I feel like it's like a rich story of like how you came to be. So before we end, I wanted to ask you, for anyone listening, what advice would you give them for anyone out there feeling lost?
I would say you have a light in you and you need to keep it burning. So from where do you source your strength? And if you can answer that question, right, from where you source your strength and how you keep it burning, then you won't be lost anymore. Because to be in the light means that you are in love, means that there is no fear. And when you're lost, it means you're trapped in something that is not divine. Because being connected to that which is divine is you don't have a sense of being lost because you're in full alignment with whatever it is that is energy, purpose, just all holy amazingness, right? So my advice would be that if you're feeling lost, reconnect to that light that is in you. If you've never thought of having a light inside you, then explore, ask other people about, listen to all 27 other episodes, like ask questions because, I remember when I was in my senior year of college and my boyfriend at the time would constantly say to me, but Carolyn, what is your passion? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. What's your passion? I don't know what you're talking about. And I just had to keep like trudging through. What is my passion? What's my purpose? What's my passion? What's my purpose? So if you don't know what your light is, just keep asking yourself, what is my light? What's my light? What's my light? And like the answer will come because I believe everybody has that divine energy and divine power and divine connection within them. And so if you're lost, you either have been covering up your light or you haven't discovered your light. And if you've been covering up your light, then you need practices that will keep your light from being covered, which is usually self-care. It's usually, it's a variety of different things.
Balance.
Yeah.
Right? We can't fill our light when we're running ourselves to death, first and foremost.
Exactly.
Right.
And then if it's because you've never known your light, you have to decide if you want to know what that light is or if there is a light. You have to decide. You have to not overthink it. Yeah. You have to just ask questions, explore, and don't hesitate to inquire about that. And that doesn't mean that, you have to be, dunked in a baptism to find your light. Like you can find your light every single day by just meditating for 30 seconds. And I can almost guarantee you that will spill over into a practice that is going to show you your light. Right? I can almost guarantee you that if you journal, what is my light? And you just let the answers come to you.
And it could be like,
and you did it every day for 6 months. my guess is you're going to have an answer. And if you don't, like, come and tell me and I'll help you figure it out.
I promise you will have an answer.
Yeah.
Because it's showing a desire. It all starts from a little desire.
I think more often than not, we're covering up our light, and that's why I started by saying that little song of like, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, that we used to sing in Sunday school. Like, I have come back to that, and like, it makes me smile, but also like, it is so true. Like, Marianne Williamson wrote the book A Return to Love that I just fell in love with in the early 90s. And I have reread it multiple times, and she points people toward A Course in Miracles. And I also very much enjoy those texts. And she has a quote in there. It goes something like, who am I to be amazing? And who am I to be wonderful? And I'm sure people have heard this before. So
love it.
Who am I to be all these like fabulous things? And then she says, who are you not to be? And I just really took that to heart. Like, when I was just feeling like, okay, I've like done all these amazing things and I'm scared. I'm scared to keep going. I'm scared to continue. I'm scared to learn more about who I am. I'm scared to do all my endeavors. Get over the fear, jump off the high dive. Like, who are you not to be? Like, you are divine.
You are divine.
And most of the time we're covering it up, or we're not, or
downplaying it,
or not fueling it, right? Not fueling the fire. So, morning routine, daily spiritual practice, daily. And for me, then that's daily finding of God. Like, that's
leaving
what
that
will keep people from being
open.
lost.
Yeah. Stop spending every waking ounce of your day and time distracted with something. Like, give God some of your space and time.
Yeah.
Stillness. Find some stillness.
Exactly. And what we were talking about before, when I said, well, what are my 6 priorities? And I actually, this was, 6 or 8 months ago, I looked at it and said, well, okay, so I say that God is my number 1 priority. How is that? Like, am I really, like, what's the evidence
of that? What's the evidence?
What's the evidence of that? Oh, okay. Like, we have evidence that health is a priority. I have evidence that my husband's a priority. I have evidence that my kids are a priority. I have evidence that my community is a priority because I quite crazy over volunteer. And I know I have evidence that my friends are a priority, and that's part of my community. And I know that I have evidence that my work is a priority. So it was like the last thing. It was like, wait, the one thing that is like the foundation and bedrock of being able to align completely, I wasn't making a priority. There was no evidence of that as a priority. And then, so that's why I just built in every single day. First, it was just one thing. Then it was another thing. Now there's like 3 or 4 things. Yeah. Now I'm building in things weekly, so like more like weekly deep dives. Weekly, I'll watch something on TV instead of heading out to a church or something.
Have you noticed that like the spirituality, that connection with God is the container of everything you're trying to do?
Oh yeah.
Like, that's like you said, it's the bedrock. It's the foundation. It's like, we want to do all these things, be with God, and then let those things come, right? Like, it's just like, you can't, I just always say, you cannot do it without God. You cannot.
Agreed. And now my challenge is, how do I model that for my children, right? So how do I model that for my clients? How do I model that for my community, right? And back to what we were saying before, how do I model that without looking completely kooky and crazy, right? Because I'm either going to be like, I feel like we have this image in our society of people who are spiritual as either like totally hocus pocus, and they're burning incense, and they're like, doing smoke and, all kinds of stuff. And then there's like the, people who are like, holding up signs on the freeway of like, Jesus loves you. And, there's all these different ways that people are introduced to how they can connect to their spirituality. And then I'm excited to help people connect with their spirituality through talking in this podcast. But I think it's too bad that spirituality, kind of like the coming to spirituality, this nurturing of your light, this finding of your light, it's like it has an image problem in our society. Yeah. Right?
Well, and it's interesting because for me, this is me speaking, I have felt like too many people get caught up in the container and they miss out in the spirituality of the divine,
Agreed.
The spiritual revelation, the connection, the feeling of it, right? Mm-hmm. But I, for me, feel like there needs to be that tension. The container that has a structure, and then that tethering to that spirituality of that, the feeling of it, the being with it, the embodying it. Like you need to have both in my mind. For me, I need to have both, like that tension of the container and this upper level of personal revelation and intuition and that connection with God. To me, that's the yin and yang. That's the balance I find that has helped me feel very grounded. So,
and I love that for you. And I think that that's the most important part, right? You need to discover what connects you to that which is divine inside you and what connects you to that which is divine outside you. And how do you practice that daily, weekly, monthly, annually, right?
Intentionally. With a question.
Yeah.
Like, just ask God.
And
what's next?
And it's different for everybody. And sometimes it's a shame that the container will, the idea of like having to have a particular church or a particular religion or a particular doctrine or particular rules will kind of like give this notion of like finding that which is divine in yourself an image problem, because the whole point is to like be connected with divinity, like be divinely and divinely shine, right?
Yes.
You know, we have a close friend of ours that has just relatively recently started going to church a lot and started to engage in all of these like practices and behaviors that are aligned with church and going to church and, you know, basically evangelical Christian church. And some of our other friends have been like really like, whoa, they're going to church, like, whoa, this is like, wow, they're really doing it. And they're doing this thing and almost like off put by it. And what I think is so sad is that like the point is that this person is now like finding a way to finding God, to use your term of your podcast, like finding a way to connect to that which is divine in themselves and that which is divine in their marriage and that which is divine in their family and that which is divine in their community and that which is divine externally. And so this practice of this person going to church and like is kind of like will like freak other people out because it's so connected to this what this church is or what this church is about, like as defined by society. And, you know, there's implications of like political affiliations and there's implications of like whether or not they believe certain things or whether or not they're will they drink anymore? Will they not drink anymore? And will they do these things anymore? Will they not? And it's like, so what? Like,
I know.
why is there so much focus on this container? Let's celebrate the fact that this person has now honored that which is divine, because I was, while this person was doing all this, I was over there like not doing jack shit, right?
For sure.
For a long time. And I think it's hugely courageous. So I think for you, thank you for sharing that, like the tension between the container and the individual experience is important. Yeah. And that for this, friend of ours, having the container was the unlocking. But for me, not having the container is unlocking.
Isn't
right?
that so wild?
So I think there are so many unique ways that people can get out of being lost and have that sense of finding what is divine and, to use your language, finding God.
Yeah. I think God is like, just find me. I believe that it's a mother and a father. I don't think they want us down here struggling alone. They want us to know they're helping. They want us to know that we're surrounded by angels, by divine help at any time. And I think that anytime we acknowledge their help and know that they're there, they rejoice, period.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, I think with that, kind of God has an image problem too, right? Like, because there's so many ways that we choose to, when we think of God, like we think of the majority of the world, if I'm correct, but definitely the majority of the United States is somehow subscribed to Christianity. And a very large portion of that is evangelical Christianity. And a large portion of that talks about like who God is. And God thinks this and God thinks that and God says the other thing and God says the other. And it's like everybody has their lists and ideas of who God is and what God thinks. And they say he, right? And what he would or would not want and what you should or should not do. And that can be incredibly useful in a container for helping you connect to that which is divine within you and helping you learn about God. But it can also really be an incredible deterrent to others who are just like, I don't even want to touch God because that is so loaded with so much stuff that I don't know anything about, that I don't agree with, whatever. Kind of like how I've rejected the container idea, but like they're throwing like, and like I've done myself, they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like,
totally.
Like I completely didn't connect with anything that was spiritual about myself, anything about faith at all, because I was like, I'm just over it.
Yeah.
And I wish that, anybody who is lost and needs to discover their light or needs to like brighten their light or rekindle their light, my hope is that they would not, squelch the opportunity to connect with that which is divine just because there's so much out there socio-politically around what is God that it doesn't have to have a language in a container, but if you can find a language in a container that works for you, that's also beautiful. So, yeah.
Well, and I think it comes down to finding it within first, because that's where it ultimately is. It's not, nothing is outside of you. Love God, you know what I mean? Like the love of men. It starts with you. You can love others so much more. And we want to say like, get out there and get outside of yourself. Get outside of yourself. Yes, for sure. We don't want to just be thinking about ourselves all the time, but it's like, if you're criticizing yourself all day long, you limit yourself on how you love other people, period. If you love yourself at a 2, you cannot love others at a 10. Right. That's what I'm saying. Like,
because you're not honoring that which is divine. Because if you honor that which is divine, you're going to love yourself.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like when you start that internal work, it explodes on the outside.
Yeah.
Not the other way around. If you're looking on the outside of what you need for you on the outside, you'll find it's limited. Yeah. You've got to find that within, and then it's so much easier to see on the external.
And for me, there was a disconnect because the message I received when I was a little girl was that it does start from within, right? It starts from this little light of mine.
Yeah, you did. That was
right.
Good.
That was the message that I got. That was the message I was told. It starts from within, and God is going to work through you and in you, and that's a lot of the phrasing that was used, and so that was already there.
Yeah.
Somehow there was a breakdown in my own personal experiences that the priority of starting from within was no longer fueled.
Yeah.
Right. So all the different churches that I went to, that start from within wasn't fueled, or if it was, I didn't get the message.
Yeah. And I think
could be a little of both,
people don't, right? So it's kind of like, it's like you have a tool like a horse, and we're like, here's a horse. This is a great tool. And we're like, we don't know how to use that tool. So we pick the horse up and we carry it and we walk 10 steps and we're like, we're done with this.
Right. It's
when
a great analogy.
Like, actually, this is meant to make life easy. Jump on the horse. Let me show you how it works.
Right.
Here's this tool. And then there you go. Now you can go for miles, right? By not even having to walk at all. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just interesting. This is so good. I just love your perspective, and I love hearing your story and what has shaped you thus far in life. And just thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for opening up and, sharing your perspectives to the world. And it's amazing. Like, your journey's been awesome.
Thank you. It's definitely one of the most vulnerable conversations I've had in a very long time.
Is it?
I'm honored to be asked to share. So thank you for listening.
We will be back, and thanks for listening.